So today we're going to talk about formulating for Felix, natural color solutions that'll make pets happy and their owners even happier. So to start out, we'll just kind of go through what we'll talk about today. So first, we'll look at different insights and trends as far as replacing synthetics in pet foods, as well as this concept of what I like to call natural 2.0. There have been some options that were natural colors or once considered natural colors, and people are now trying to substitute those out for colors that are considered even more natural. And then we'll go into some of the innovations that DDW is creating in order to help ease that transition. So this first trend is called from human to hound. And so basically, we all know that the pets are not the ones that are clamoring for the natural colors to be on the label. It's the owners and the human trends that are actually driving this force. So as the human foods have started moving more towards those natural colors, pet foods are now starting to pick up those trends as well and move along to it. So some of the things that you need to consider when switching to natural colors is working with your base and what we like to call base basics. So let's say that you're wanting to substitute an FD&C Yellow 6, and we come up with a product or blend that looks something like this. We send you a picture, you love it, you want to see the color in your lab, and then when you test it in your lab, it comes out something like this. So it's definitely very different, and you might think we're absolutely barking mad for sending you the solution. But then we come to find out that our base looked a little something like this, and your base started out like this. So for us, it's really important to make sure that you're helping your color supplier in terms of what that starting base is, just because FD&C colors are so neon, they can kind of overcompensate for that. But with natural colors, that's definitely a factor to take into consideration. So just make sure that, again, you're sending samples of your base or at least giving a recipe to your color supplier, because this helps cut down on the product development time. And then it also helps us create better matches that are easier to transfer from one lab to another, and then as you go through the scale-up process. It's also really important to make sure that you're helping your color supplier by giving the processing parameters that you're using. So if you're baking a product, extruding it, going through a really intense retort process, we need to know those factors so that way we can give you the best recommendation. One instance where this would be really critical is if you're trying to substitute Red 40 and you're trying to substitute for a natural option. And so we might recommend carmine if you're going through a really intense heating process over beet, just due to the heat stability and the lack thereof with beet. So the next area that we like to work with our customers on is looking at the target colors. So it's not uncommon for us to get a request, something like, I need a meaty brown color to replace synthetics in my pet treat. But really, what is meaty brown? So let's say in your mind it's this color, but we send you some samples and they may look like this, or like this, or like this. And independently, they all may be described as meaty brown, but the way you can help your color supplier is by looking at objective criteria for this target color. So color perception will vary. It varies from computer screen to computer screen, person to person, printer to printer. So make sure that if you have a current product that you're trying to match, whether that's your product or competitor's product that you're trying to target, if you want to send a sample of that product to your color supplier, that would be helpful. You could also provide the colorimeter data, so the LAB values, where we could put that into our system and measure the color and see how close we're actually getting to it. And last, you could also do some Pantone shades or some standard references that you have available to you. So by providing that objective color measurement, it'll again cut down on that product development process. So trend number 2 is the natural 2.0, or natural is the new natural. And so when we're working with switching over to natural colors, some of the parameters of the actual project themselves we need to be aware of. One of those would be looking at the amount of color that you're actually allowed to use in your system. So if you can provide that information up front, that is extremely helpful in terms of making sure that we're providing the correct product for your final product. So here we have an example that if this were a 2% color, where we have a really nice yellow color and a nice red color, but then your system only allows for 1%, you can see how different that is. And sometimes we find out those parameters at the very end of development, and that makes it really, really difficult to make sure that we're hitting the targets that you're wanting for your final product. One of the other factors that you also need to make sure your color suppliers understand is what your cost and use is, just because natural colors will have an increase in price in most cases. So this is very critical. If, for example, we're trying to get you a yellow color, we may recommend an annatto if you're only working with a couple pennies per pound, or we may do a beta carotene. So it just kind of depends what priorities you and your marketing team have set up. Is the cost going to be the most critical point of this product change? Also, make sure if you have a clean label list. I know a lot of customers of ours have had a no-no list. By being upfront with that, you're again cutting down on that development time. And there's been some times where we'll send samples and we find out at the end that maltodextrin isn't permitted. I know propylene glycol is a big no-no. So just be sure that you're upfront with what those options are to your color supplier as well. The next thing is to determine the deviation. So you can see here that the iron oxides that we've put in some extruded pet food, we have a black, red, and yellow iron oxide. And so just be willing to look at different options and different variations in color. We'll try to get as close as we possibly can, but keeping the cost and use and keeping the use rate parameters in mind. We'll get pretty close with some vegetable juice colors. So this is a vegetable juice color where we've got really close to that black iron oxide. We also have vegetable juice beet color that we've used for the red oxide, and then a beta carotene here at the bottom. So again, set your priorities when you're looking at the different colors, when you're trying to substitute out for some of these hues. It's gonna be really hard to get it perfectly spot on, but we'll definitely try to get as close as we possibly can. So work with your team to determine what that acceptable variation is. And also consider several colors. If you have a couple of different Pantones that you'd be okay with, for example, maybe a pink red as opposed to a yellow red, then that would provide a little bit more flexibility, and you may have more options available to you if you reveal that information to your color supplier as well. So next, we'll move on to the color innovations that DDW is working on so that switching out to natural colors doesn't have to be as rough. So first is our Amaze product, which is a vegetable juice for color. This is derived from a purple corn juice, and it's very scalable, so it's great for large volume. You can see on the left we have a black iron oxide, and then on the right we've used some of the purple corn color in that product. Our next one is the Nature Brown line, and this is a good alternative to caramel color. So here we've used, on the left-hand side is a class 4 caramel color. On the right-hand side is an actual apple juice derived product where we've been able to take a fruit juice and take it through a simple cooking process in order to get some of those brown tones. We've also had some options where we've worked with pear, pumpkin, tomato. So there's a lot of different options within that line. So just feel free to come and talk to us. We're over at booth, I believe, 436. So we have some options available in samples in real life if you'd like to see those. So at the end of the day, the moral of the story is for your natural color action plan is just to remember your pets. So the P is to provide your base, make sure that you're working with your color supplier and keeping those lines of communication open so they know exactly what you're starting with. E is to give an example color to match. We need to have some sort of objective target that we're reaching, whether that's a Pantone, an actual physical sample, or even just the color data. That helps us significantly when trying to go through that product development process. T is to think about the cost and use rate parameters. Is there a certain cost limit that you have, or is there a certain use rate that your system will allow for? Let us know up front so we can give you some of the better options for that system. And then the S is to set acceptable variances. We're going to try to get as close as we possibly can to that color match for an iron oxide or an FD&C, but just be willing to also evaluate some other options that would still give that overall appearance that you're looking for at the end of the day.